A very good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 71st episode of Together for Education webinars brought to you by Notebook. Week after week, it has been our privilege to play host to some wonderful thought leaders, experienced educators, and great school principals who have all shared their thoughts on a wide range of topics that has been enriching and humbling for all of us. Months ago, when the lockdown had just started, we had set up this series of webinars so that teachers who were quickly getting accustomed to new methods of teaching, particularly online ones, could get a more hands on experience of some online platforms like Zoom. Today, however, when we look back, it has taken a life of its own and become something much bigger than what we could have anticipated. And for that, we have all of you to thank. Today, we take on a very interesting topic. We look at the house system in schools, a team of teams. All of us have gone through school with a typical, more often than not, a four-house system. There would be four houses. Almost invariably, they would carry the four colors yellow, red, blue, and green. And they would participate in a host of activities, both against each other but also together throughout their school lives. We have never stopped to question why this is done or what is the importance of this in our school lives. So today, we take a look at that and see how that plays such a crucial role in our schooling system. Before that, let me tell you a little bit about Notebook. We at Notebook are an edtech brand. We use short, crisp videos that we make tailored to every particular topic of the school curriculum to help teachers and students. Teachers find these videos useful because they can play it at the beginning of a certain class. Let's say if a teacher is going to teach a topic like photosynthesis, he or she will play a short 6-minute to 10-minute video at the start of the class, which shows the process of photosynthesis in a pictorially depictive way. The students then have a visual understanding of what is to follow, and then the teacher can take the rest of the class for discussions, debate, explanations, etc. Months later, when the student has to prepare for an exam or has to revise the same topic, they have access to these same videos on their personal devices, their smartphones, their laptops, or whatever they have at home. They can go through those same videos, which not only helps them revise the topic, but also reminds them of exactly what the teacher had said on that particular day. That is how Notebook serves students. Today, we are proud to serve more than 2 million students across India and abroad, and we hope to be of bigger use in the months to come. Today, the 30th of January, is also the death anniversary of Mahatma Gandhi. What I will do now is, before we start our session for today, is play a short snippet of one of the Notebook videos that talks about this great personality.
Gandhi did not participate in the celebrations of an independent India. He mourned the price of freedom they had to pay with the partition of India. The formation of Pakistan and the communal divide created between the Hindus and the Muslims through the partition had gone against Gandhi's vision of a secular, democratic and equal India. He travelled across the country visiting hospitals and refugee camps and giving consolation to distressed people affected by the partition. He appealed to the Sikhs, Muslims, and Hindus to not let the decision of partition affect their brotherhood and fellow feelings. The Congress passed a resolution on the rights of the minorities at the initiative of Gandhi and Nehru. The Congress too was dissatisfied with the partition. They were united in their belief that India was a secular nation of many religions and races. Now they pledged to protect the rights of their minority citizens against any kind of aggression in a new nation. Gandhi was equally concerned with the sufferings of the minorities in Pakistan, and in India he moved from Bengal to Delhi to Punjab, trying to reduce the sufferings. Gandhi's motives were misinterpreted and attacked by extremist groups. There was an attempt on his life, but he fearlessly continued spreading his message of unity. Nathuram Godse, the editor of an extremist Hindi newspaper, assassinated Gandhi on 30th January 1948 at Birla Mandir in Delhi. He was an orthodox and conservative Brahmin who was angry with Gandhi's sympathy for Muslims. The whole country was grief-stricken with Gandhi's death. They had lost an able leader and the father of the nation. International tributes poured in. Famous writer George Orwell and renowned physicist Albert Einstein paid their homage to Gandhi. Even the American magazine Time now published a glowing tribute for Mahatma. They compared him to Abraham Lincoln, a statesman, lawyer, and the President of the United States who had led the country during the American Civil War. Lincoln, too, had been assassinated by haters.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was a short snippet of one of the notebook videos. There are more than 10,000 such videos available, catering to every single topic of the school curriculum. Well, with that done, it is now time to introduce our first speaker for the day. Our first speaker today is Mr. Philip Barrett. Mr. Burrett retired as the Deputy Headmaster from the illustrious Doon School in Dehradun after 44 years of serving in education across various institutions. He served the Doon School as Housemaster, Head of Department, Dean of Activities, Dean of Student Welfare, Deputy Headmaster, Second Master, and Acting Headmaster with great distinction. Mr. Burrett also carried out a visioning exercise for the Doon School in the year 2011 through an in-depth study of a number of British public schools and various schools in the US. He qualified as a leadership trainer at Wellington College, UK in the year 2000. He is also an athlete, an adventurer, and a naturalist. Sir, privileged to have you with us. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Bayu, and a very good evening to you, Achin, Abhishek, our entire notebook team, Mrs. Shadra, Mrs. Sihag, and all the guests who've tuned in. When I looked at this topic, I just feel that the house system that we follow in India is more a throwback to the British education system than the American school system. It's a wonderful way to break up a school into, as you said, 4, sometimes more than 4 subdivisions, mainly for the purpose of sports teams and other competitions. The house system also breeds loyalty, a sense of belongingness, team spirit. But having said that, not all schools have the house system. And of course, they have their own reasons for this. Now, one of the schools I visited in my tours is Eaton College, which was founded in 1440. And this is not the oldest school in England. Winchester was formed, I think, in 1380. Now, when Eaton was formed, there were these king scholars, a few 25 students from all over the country who had to pass a very stringent examination and were housed in this beautiful school and taught by the best Oxford dons for free. Later on, as the school developed and got known, many other students who could afford the fees, to pay fees, came to Eton, but there was no place to stay. So their parents set them up in these lodgings down the main street between Windsor and Eton. And they brought servants and maids and cooks along with them. And as more and more students joined the school, other students began staying where their first students stayed. And so there many houses and flats along the street became the first houses at Eton. Eventually, Eton bought up these properties. Today, Eton has over 25 houses. Talk about the house system. It doesn't have 4, it has 25 or more houses. Now, in a day school, the housemaster's job is to get sports teams and debating teams ready by holding trials and selections. It's a useful role, but not half as tedious as a housemaster's role in a residential school, where the housemaster is in loco parentis, and the person from whom the house gets its values, models, and character. Housemaster's character in many ways shapes the house. Now, in a boarding school, a house is administered by a housemaster, a matron, the resident tutors, who are like counselors, who are assigned from the teaching staff. Now, these tutors are not academic tutors, but pastoral tutors. And even today, houses and schools are named after donors, rivers, mountain ranges sometimes, old boys or scientists, each with their, as Shabayu said, colors, flags, mottos, coat of arms, crests. One school that I know even made the mistake of having a penguin as the emblem of a house known as the Arctic House, till I pointed out that penguins are not found in the Arctic, and so they changed that um, logo. Now, I was a housemaster of a senior house at Doon for about 9 years. Each of our five houses was separate entities. They were in separate buildings with their gardens. And by the way, we even had inter-house garden competitions. We had our support staff of tailor, dhobis, hairdressers, and whatnot. And I had a set of tutors, 10 tutors, and a matron who we called a dame. And each house was physically separate from the other houses. And these 50 boys under my care were like my sons. I knew their allergies, their family history, their academic record, apart from their siblings and their families. And so when it came to Raksha Bandhan every year, and we allowed boys to go to the girls' school if they had sisters, they wouldn't fool me because sometimes they would get into the bus even if they didn't have a sister there. But I would go and fish them out and said, no, only sisters. I kept close contact with their parents and communicated often. In my free time, I sat on their beds, told them stories, asked them about the posters that they had on their softboards, which was mainly Bob Marley, Jimi Hendrix in those days. I didn't allow posters that extolled alcohol and smoking or degraded women, but all else was okay. I sat outside their bathrooms to keep an eye on who was using too much water. I made sure they ate their porridge in the morning, and also wrote their college reports when they applied to US colleges as a mentor. Now, the major work, in my view, was to counsel them, to give them a shoulder to cry on, to comfort them when they had crossed the line, to distribute punishment cards, and also to advocate for them when they were in trouble with the headmaster. I selected the teams. We had over 12 sports teams. There was debating teams, writing teams, competitions of all sorts. But I had my staff of 10 loyal tutors to help me do this. And of course, the senior boys of the house. I would watch them play sports from PT at 6 a.m. I applauded, reprimanded, advised them at halftime. Also, we sat in pre-match training planning sessions. Also, I had to keep the slogan shouting and the tribal war dances and the war cries and the cheering within boundaries, within accepted boundaries. Because a part of my job was to come down heavy on them if they cross the line. Now, there is no use having a house system unless there's an adult presence in the house. And the problem with boys in a boys' school is that boys lack men apart from their fathers to take charge of their lives, to trust them, to stand by them and support them. And that is what myself and my team of tutors did. We were the other men in these boys' lives. And watching them play sport was one of um, the biggest area of support that we could give these boys. And my work really began after 2 p.m., after teaching my whole quarter of lessons. In the course of my work as a housemaster, leadership was taught to them. I selected their prefects. I counseled them. I trained them in keeping discipline. And my tutors were of paramount importance. Another thing I did was to handle the heartache and the disappointments. And adolescents today can't take disappointment easily. They break down. If somebody did not become an authority or a captain, I had to sit with him for some time. Even after the social with the girls' school, there were a lot of heartache. If some girl hadn't talked to somebody or she hadn't written to somebody, I had to take that on as well and counsel them about that part of life. Now, boys certainly, and girls to a lesser extent, love to belong to something bigger. They love to contribute to the cause. And something bigger was the house, which almost took on a divine entity. We couldn't let the house down. We couldn't lose to that house across the field. Even if I had to strap up my half-broken leg and hide the fact that I had fever, I had to go out and play and give my life for my house. It was all about who won the cockhouse, how many points we got, and all that. And sometimes I would say, listen, chap, it's better to have you alive than to have you die for the house. I prefer a live kid than a dead one. Now, competition and cooperation are both important in a school. And while the house spirit breeds a lot of competition, there also is need to help boys cooperate with other boys in other houses. And so what I did once was I actually tied up with the girls' school that was our sister school. And one of their house mistresses and myself, who were friendly, said, let's join these two houses together. And so I invited the girls from that house to our house feast, and we were invited to the house feast of the girls' school. And I tell you, this didn't go down very well with the other houses in Doon because they thought that my boys were benefiting. Yes, when it comes to discussions on gender issues, boys do benefit from the company of girls. Of course, this is something that happens in a purely boys' school. In a co-ed school, you wouldn't have this problem. Now, the other thing was, once you passed out of a house, you became the alumni of a school. And sometimes the closeness and the bonding between boys of a same house is stronger than the boys of a same school. Now, some houses were known for their sport or a particular sport. Some houses were known for having their music better than the other houses. Some of the naughtiest boys in school came from a particular house. In some houses in Doon School, we said that they had the best cafeterias and served the best burgers. So every house had its own peculiarities, its own heroes, its own quirks. Yes, and in Doon, every house had its own kitchenettes and cafeterias, and each served their unique snacks and drinks. And before I joined school, before the 1970s, each house actually had its own kitchen and dining hall. And the housemaster was like the headmaster. He presided over all meals. He said the grace. He made the announcements to the houses, which teams were playing today and where there were going to be practices for drama in the night. Now, to be recognized as a hero and to be accepted by a group is very important. And each house has its own traditional rites of passage, is the honors boards, to be loved by the rest, to be raised up, to contribute, and to believe and live by the house motto. That's what children love. There's a sense of tribalism that boys especially thrive on. And the houses give you that tribalism, the cheering, the chanting. And that is why those boys who after 6 to 8 years in the school failed to contribute, failed to live up to the expectations of the house, became antisocial. There were boys who had discipline issues. They were like the black sheep of the house, in the house system. And very often, the psychological problems that affected boys in their last year of school was because they were not contributing towards the house spirit. Now, some schools have a different model. I know a school up in the hills in Missouri doesn't have teachers who become housemasters. They have separate domestic parents, usually a husband-wife couple, who do not teach, but who are the pastoral heads, and they stay in the house and live in the house 24/7. Now, we don't have that in the Doon School, but our wives play a very important part to support us as a housemaster. I know my wife was the recipient of far more secrets from the boys than I was. They would also be treated with cake and coffee on certain days when we had our meetings. And every house has its own rules, own system of awarding colors, own house council rules. And the bond between students and the housemaster is a very, very strong bond that continues much after these boys leave school. And I remember when these boys leave school, we used to go to the station to see them off on the night train. And I can tell you, I can assure you that for me and my tutors, it was a night of a lot of weeping and gnashing of teeth as these boys left us. It was almost like your son's leaving you after 6 years in school. Now, I can tell you that the boys also had a very strong bond with the support staff, with our sweepers and our cooks. And I know them when one of them had his house washed away in a flash flood, he came to me, and all I did was to write to 5 or 6 of my old boys from my house. And in a week's time, I handed this man over 50,000 rupees. I said, the boys have sent this to you to bail you out and help you out over this very difficult period. And housemaster's role in a boarding school is a real learning ground because he learns how to administer a house. And it involves finances, it involves handling staff, it involves handling adults, the vendors, house feasts, and other administrative issues. And that's why housemasters from public schools are often picked up to become headmasters and principals of other schools, maybe day schools. And the support staff that I just talked about were equally loyal to the school and to the house. They would come for house matches and cheer even louder than all of us to see their boys play. Many of these support staff actually had seen the fathers of these boys or even grandfathers play for the house. And so this close bonding began. And so therefore, all I can say is that the house system is a subdivision of a school. It's almost like a battalion in an army regiment. And each house has its own peculiar functioning, its style, its own value system. We jokingly called one of the houses in our school, which was called Oberoi House, because the money was given by Mr. Oberoi, the hotelier. We called them the OPS, the Oberoi Public School, because they were so different from the rest of us that we thought that they were a school in their own right. And so the house system is an important part of school. You learn a lot of values from the housemaster, from the tutors. You get close to the tutors' wives, who are actually like your mother. And we get to know each other as a family. And once a year at Founders Day, the housemaster and his wife would throw a big dinner, and to which all the boys and the parents of the house were invited. So it was like a large family. And when you live like this as a part of a large family, it is very difficult for these boys to play up and be indisciplined in the class because they know you so well. They will never play up, they will never be rude. And they keep in touch with me even today. So with that, Shibayu, I want to hand this over to you. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, sir. Week after week, we stand in awe at hearing from your wealth of experience. I've already heard from various old Doon boys that you had been a very popular housemaster. I'm sure inviting the girls' school over would have contributed to that. Well, with that lighter note, let me now introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker today is Achin Bhattacharyya. Achin is the founder and CEO at Notebook. A chartered accountant by training, Achin was a director at Deloitte prior to starting Notebook. He has worked in India and abroad in various senior capacities in GE, PwC, KPMG, and Deloitte. He is a fellow of the ICAI and a member of CPA Australia. He is also the recipient of the prestigious Indian Achievers Award. Achin is an avid reader and a passionate traveler with keen interest in economics, history, literature, and philosophy. He is a regular speaker at various forums and chambers of commerce and also contributes articles to numerous publications regularly. He is also on the board of some of the most renowned corporates and contributes significantly to their brand strategies. Achin, over to you.
Good evening, everyone. Shubha, am I audible?
Yeah, Achin, loud and clear.
I once again welcome all of you to today's session on a topic which may bring back nostalgia and a lot of memories in many of us. Red is my favorite color. And till date, when I go for shopping or walk past any store window in any part of the world, and I see a red t-shirt on display, I pause for a moment and try to compare the particular shade of red with the shade my red house t-shirt had in school. Most of the times, the color doesn't match. Maybe because the school t-shirt also had stains from the sheer joy of playing. But whenever the shade matches, the schoolboy in me takes over and the professional entrepreneur takes a back seat. I end up buying it, perhaps only to wear it on a Sunday when I play with my children in the morning. Creating smaller communities within the larger community where they can make stronger bonds and connection. It's a wonderful way to personalize an experience, makes one comfortable and confident much faster. Coming to house system, as Burrett mentioned, it is fairly common initially in English schools for students to be divided up into houses throughout the school year. Children earn points for good behavior, special accomplishment, and more. Since each house includes kids from every grade, it fosters a sense of community throughout the school. And that again, if you look at this from higher education perspective, for instance, even in US universities like Rice, Rajsthan, they still give dormitories a large significance. For example, allowing each residential college its own advisors and social events. The attachments formed tend to be so significant that alumni, upon meeting one another, frequently ask, "What college were you?" The sense of camaraderie and identity is part of what schools are trying to develop. Now, in house system, for instance, first graders on campus getting the opportunity to become buddies with the fifth grader because they see each other in house meetings every week. Children using small items like house colored socks, tutus in a bid for extra points, eating lunch with their housemates, and hearing announcements of accomplishment as a house. Now, house system also gives children an opportunity to interact with teachers much more on a day-to-day basis. And this can indeed be critical when dealing with children touched by any kind of trauma. I was going through some literature on this particular subject, some articles. One very touching incident that I came across that I wanted to share with all of you. I was reading about a first grader who lost her mother, a teacher at the school. Now, when she lost her mother, another teacher expressed concern to other students of the house that she has lost her mother. And the moment she said that, the first kid in first row stood up and said, "Our house has got her." And this went all down the line. The kids were like, "We have got her. The house has got her." So that's the kind of sense of belonging. Thus, opportunities like developing leadership skill arise from the patterns established by the house system. For instance, often we see a sixth grader shepherding juniors from their classroom to house meeting. Students being taped to take over house planning duties from teachers. Many principals and housemasters believe that these mentoring activities are useful in helping reducing any kind of bullying or other behavioral problems. I was reading about an interesting case study about a particular school, Lake Kenyan School, where after introducing house system, the school earlier, they did not have any house system. So when they introduced house system, incidents of disciplinary violation went down, suspensions went down. A sense of inclusion and engagement in a common enterprise can have academic benefits as well as socio-economic benefits. Emotional benefits, I guess, are really important because kids are often really excited about school, considering the fact that they get an opportunity to interact with a much smaller community, much more personal experience. They are happier and naturally learning outcomes are better. And it's a proposition supported by scholarly research, tying a heightened sense of belonging to increased achievement. Thus, attributes like unity, a change of culture, providing opportunities to students to communicate across grade, building a sense of pride, I think very, very important. And promoting character traits, core character traits, Burrett also spoke about that. And creating leadership opportunities. Also, within houses, there is another term, house family, which I understand is a smaller group. A house family is a small group of students assigned within houses. Students are assigned to teachers and staff who are like their house parents, roughly 12 to 15 students, an even smaller community. Now, coming to the transition part, which I think is one of the primary benefits of house system. Imagine incoming kindergarten students being welcomed by sixth grader. This is an incident I was reading about. Sixth graders planned a new tradition for incoming students who are coming in. Big kids formed a cheering tunnel, placed a Hawaiian leaf in one of the house colors around each one's neck and invited them to play with them. Now, these are wonderful incidents, right? So, at times it helps students acclimatize to a student's body without being overwhelmed. Now, for teachers, at times, we have seen, even if you look at things from an educator's perspective as well, because houses, not only they have students, but each house, they're educators as well. So benefits are tremendous, the kind of opportunity that students get to interact, to learn from their teachers. In house system, as Burrett also mentioned, that they know every family, every student, and to start dealing with them in this sort of large abstract cohorts, much more individualized responses, which really helps students eating lunch in their houses. At times, I was going through some names. In one of the schools I saw, school with 4 houses, each house named after a rare gemstone. Beautiful, isn't it? And not only houses have just mission, colors, chant, symbol, they also have hand signs and mottos. Classroom containing 4 distinct colored containers, and students who earn a house point are given a bean to place in their house container, which along with others gets periodically emptied into larger ones. Thus, each student feels that they are contributing to the accomplishment of the house. So these are benefits from the student's perspective. Even if you look at things from the school's perspective, definitely it helps. It helps in attracting the best of talent and retaining them. And any kind of small interaction within a smaller group creates stronger bonds. I guess when it comes to implementation, implementation is the key. We all understand that definitely the benefits are innumerable. But in order to implement this, because there can always be a counter argument. There can always be a counter argument that creating divisions, creating groups or subgroups within a group. What are the downsides? So I guess implementation is the key. in order to ensure that we balance. For instance, positivity, very, very important in order for the house system to function as an effective way to reinforce desired behavior. For instance, awarding points without taking them away. For instance, teachers emphasizing on friendly competition, emphasize on the friendly word, because students need to be taught how to compete successfully. At times, educators do worry that competition might at times might not be beneficial, right? But we need to respond by carefully calibrating the systems, like for instance, the point system, to not only award achievement, but also award participation, effort, and growth, because they're as important as achievement. I guess it also requires a long-term vision and commitment, and an involvement of the whole school, of the top leadership, of all teachers, most important. For a house system to really succeed, there should be something substantial behind it. For instance, an underlying ethos which we need to reinforce. Now, if you look at things from a modern school's perspective, I guess, and what kind of role the house system plays, certain terms like helps in building identity, no doubt about it. Because the moment you mention houses in the context of a school, for a certain generation, it is hard not to be instantly transported to Hogwarts and all the connotation of the sorting hat. Originating from boarding schools where students lived in house, and inclusion of a house system is popular among schools, thanks to J.K. Rowling. And those most famous of houses, there's more awareness than ever of the advantage of the house system. Now, at times it helps also because students who are coming from smaller environments, smaller schools to a big school, it helps in removing the fear. You know, that small fish in a big pond syndrome. It helps in bringing out the spirit of collaboration, students of all ages collaborating, no barrier to friendship, which I guess is really important, because camaraderie and solidarity is unique. Benefits of vertical interaction across level, across grades, where the young look up to the elder, and where the elder also looks out for support and the younger, towards the younger. Another very important aspect, competition, we discussed about, because see, the moment we discuss about houses, it is very difficult to neglect competition. Building the potentially competitive element. Because, say for instance, instances like sports day and the role that houses play in it. So this competitive spirit that houses build, I guess also helps in later life. Another important aspect is leadership, because it allows for promotion of students' responsibility. For instance, giving children the chance to learn and develop leadership skill. House leaders, students who are managing student bodies, because it really helps a student prepare for a life beyond school. House captains rising to a set of challenges, developing skills like time management, delegation, really important. So I guess these are certain points that I wanted to share with all of you. I thank all of you for giving me a patient hearing. Today, as I understand, before the session, we saw that there were some issues with regard to internet in various parts of the country. So we were a little worried about today's session, but touch wood, so far, I guess it has been seamless, and I really hope so. We have a great stellar panel today, and on this very important topic, I really look forward to the deliberations. I thank all of you again. Over to you, Shubhai.
Thank you, Achin. Thank you for that wonderful presentation. I think we've looked at the house system in great detail. But after the theory classes, it's always good to get out to the practicals. And to take us through the practical implications of their house, we do have a stellar panel with us today. I'll just take a couple of minutes to introduce them. We have with us Ms. Seema Shadra. Ms. Seema Shadra is a passionate educationist. She holds postgraduate degrees in English and geology and a bachelor's degree in education. She also has a postgraduate diploma in school leadership and management. She is a founder teacher and now the principal of Vantage Hall Girls Residential School in Dehradun. She has taught at various reputed schools throughout the country, such as the Assam Valley School, Tejpur, and VGS International School, Delhi. She has had the opportunity to observe and draw from the educational practices in the US and in Spain. As the principal of a girls' residential school, her prime focus is on individual development of her students, helping them grow with love and care into strong women of tomorrow. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us today. Privileged to have you on the panel. We also have with us Mr. Rajeshree Sihag, who is the principal of the Fabindia school, who believes that creativity is much more than just a skill. She feels committed to introduce skills at a young age to promote entrepreneurship. This kind of education, she believes, will generate job creators instead of job seekers. She loves to inspire, engage, and encourage students by divulging creative thinking and problem solving abilities to bring out the best learning in and out of the classrooms. She obtained her master's degree in English and psychology and did her undergraduate work in physical education, especially specializing in swimming, and began her career at the American Embassy School in New Delhi, working as and then she worked as an educator at schools like Mayo College Girls School in Ajmer, Pathways World School in Gurgaon, and the Indian High School in Dubai. Her motto is collaborative school environment, creating successful teachers and students by partnering with parents and the community to enrich the experience of learning. Ma'am, privileged to have you with us today. Thank you so much for being here. I will now stop the share, switch on my camera. I would invite both of you to do the same before we can start. Rajeshree ma'am, Seema ma'am, thank you so much. I will start with Seema ma'am. We will first just go around the table. I would like your initial thoughts on the house system. And if you could tell us a little bit about the house structure that you have in your school.
Thank you, Shubhayu. Thank you, Team Notebook, for having me here today. Good evening to all my panelists and all the listeners. We've heard some beautiful thoughts already about house system. Mr. Burrett has a wealth of experience. He's worked for years with boys at the Doon, and being a house master, I think it gives you an amazing experience. That's something that only a house master can, uh, explain it to us, and he has in his own words. So thank you, Mr. Barrett, for that. Coming to the house system in our school, we are a girls' residential school, and presently we have only three houses, which are based on the colors of the feathers. The logo of our school is the nest, which actually represents the nurturing time, the incubation time that a school gives to the students. The nest has three colors, and our houses are based on those three colors. House system, of course, is so imperative. It becomes imperative actually more in the boarding schools, because they are here with us from morning till night. And to when you divide them into groups, it's easy to give attention to each girl, to discover talent, and of course the bonding that they have with their housemates, that we all know who have experience of residential school. Of course, house system plays a very vital role even in the day schools. I have experience of working with the day schools, but that's different. That's more kind of, I would say it's limited to preparing students for competitions, or kind of discovering talent and nurturing it, and it's only about few events in the year which are on the calendar. But here in the residential school, that becomes your home, your house, your pride, your identity. You're ready to do everything for your house. And Mr. Barrett brought out very beautiful points. But one point where he said that boys, I've written that also, boys like to contribute to something larger more than the girls would. Sorry, sir, with due respect, I would like to differ here. I think I have to invite Mr. Burrett to one of our inter-house soccer matches here, and he has to see how competitive our girls become. They don't care about injuries. Girls who sustain injuries, they continue to play till the end of the match, just because of that, Josh, that we have to win for our house. So it's no different in girls. Times are changing. Girls are also competitive, very, very competitive, and they want to bring, laurels to their house. So house system, of course, it sets in ethos, a different ethos in the students, lifetime bonding. And like Mr. Achin said, it's an amalgamation of different classes. Usually during the academic time, they are involved in all the activities and learning together. It's the classmate thing all the time. So here, because of the house system, you're interacting with students of other classes. And it's such, it's really heartwarming to see how seniors look after the juniors, and how juniors, they look up to their didis, and learn so much and imbibe from them. And they all are working towards that common goal of earning marks for their house. So I feel house system is very, very important. And it, of course, is a platform. It's a training ground for leadership. And there's certain things that you learn only in a group, how to adjust, how to collaborate, how to, you may not be all the time, on the, visible when you're doing. There's so many girls who are working in the backstage, they artwork, props, and everybody's kind of pitched in when it comes to house. What we teachers in the classroom can't make them do, the house spirit makes them do. Say, for example, an assignment, you give them a deadline. Of course, I mean, most students do, but some, if they don't, you tell them your house is going to lose marks, and here the work comes. So they're intrinsically motivated when it comes to house. I think house system is an excellent way of engaging all children. It gives chance to all students. They know each other very well, bonding among themselves and with the house mistresses. Like Mr. Burrett said, even today, his students come to him, and he knew about everything about his students, from their allergies, from their, family backgrounds. So that kind of bonding can happen only when we have house system and smaller groups. I feel it's a wonderful system.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Rajeshree, ma'am, I'll come to you next with the same question.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Shubha. So much has been said about the house system, and I too believe very passionately. And while I was listening to Mr. Burrett, Seema ji, Achin, I was like back into my school time, and I was thinking about those days when we used to have these competitions, which we have all been talking about. Ours happens to be a day school, and this is my 4th year in the school. And as I have come from a boarding school, so those boarding school experiences and the spirit of house spirit is actually something which is very different from a day school. But as I have come from a boarding school, I had to bring something similar experience to these children, because I felt that they should not miss out on those joys of not being in a residential school and missing out on those things which actually a house system builds into these children. And these experiences, what we have all have been talking about, are something they don't stay just till the school. We are actually preparing them for the life ahead, where we are talking about these teams, where we are talking about these points. All of these things are something which, once they go out of the school, they contribute to the community. They contribute towards being better, good citizens. So what we did in our school, in spite of we have a day school, limited duration we have with the children, my 2 things that we brought in was how to bring this sense of belongingness. Because in a boarding school, it's much easier. You have kids all day round. But in a day school, what we designed was we have these cleanliness drives. which if we give them as individuals that, okay, today we are going to do cleanup of the campus, not that we don't have people to do that, but we need our children to own the school. So doing this exercise as an house activity was brilliant. The work which our support staff would do the entire day to clean up the entire campus, these kids as an house activity would do it within an hour's time. And the idea was not to get them to clean, but the idea was to imbibe those sense of belongingness in them. So that was one thing that we try to figure out. We do a lot of service projects, which are house-based projects. Again, the only reason is because otherwise getting to do service projects is a little challenge in schools. But when you put it into a house spirit, it becomes a little more easier and you see better outcomes. The other thing that I brought in to the school was how every individual contributes to the house system. Because a lot of times when we were hearing that majorly these house systems are preparing teams or getting children ready for some competitions. But in that race, what happens, there are a lot of children who are left behind and who don't feel belonged to that house because there are children who are not good in sports, they are not good in public speaking. So what is there for those children? So what we did, we have certain competitions where every child participates and contributes points to the house. Like if we have a storytelling competition, we don't select the best out of the rest. Instead, we do it as a class activity where every child is contributing 1, 2, 3, whatever number of points to the house. So that way they feel that they all are contributing towards the house points, towards winning the Cockhouse Trophy. So these are the two things that we majorly focus on, that how every child contributes and how we build the sense of belongingness in the school through the house systems.
Wonderful, ma'am. Ma'am, you said how many houses do you have?
4.
4 houses. And what are they called?
They are called Dhyanchand, Aryabhatta. I'm forgetting the houses. Oh, I'm losing track on that. Can I just come?
No worries, ma'am. We'll come back to that. Seema, ma'am, again, I will also ask you the name of your 3 houses. It's just fascinating. Over the years in school events, we have always found the most interesting house names.
Yeah, interestingly, the names of our houses have been given by our students only. So in the first year of our school, when we decided to have houses, one was, I told you how we associated it with the logo. So the 3 colors, we have buttercup yellow, marigold orange, and rose pink. These are the 3 houses that we have. And the girls have named it.
Wow.
At times we do
Wonderful.
feel that now as we've grown as a school, so we are contemplating if the girls would like to change names and we have 4 houses, but that's something that could be in the offing. Right now we have these 3 houses.
And ma'am, because yours is a residential school, are these houses based on the physical structures, the hostels in which these girls stay?
Well, that's what the plan is, but given the strength that we have right now, as we grow, of course, that's how it's going to be. The dorms are as per the houses, but we have a building is the same. Yes.
Oh, wonderful.
It's like, so we are, in fact, I would say, they're bonding with each other in the house and also the school.
Which is interesting because my next question.
Advantage of given the number that we have, right?
Interesting because my next question was that I understand the house promotes collaboration within the house, but what about across the house? Do you see a lot of that happening, or does it create very strong walls, given the tribalism that you and Bharat spoke about?
That's where I think even the house mentors play a very important role. Girls have to be counseled, and see, there are other activities that they do together. When they represent school in inter-school competitions, they forget about which house they are hailing from. Then it's about school. So there are other activities also which bond them as schoolmates. But yes, sometimes it, that house feeling, how they are so competitive about their house, and then yeah, they do not really a wall, but there could be a divide at times. But that's where we educators need to step in. And as I said, activities at school, the academics, during the day, and of course, say it's founders, then everybody comes together. So I think this is how they grow up. There are times when they think of house all the time, and there are times when it comes to school, they're all together for their school.
Wonderful. Rajeshri ma'am,
Yeah, I would like to add here, like
yeah,
as they have houses, they also have their classes, they have their clubs and society. So they're into lot many groups. There are a lot of activities. So once that inter-house thing is over, I think they very quickly switch to the next one and they get into the spirit of the next one. That's the beauty of childhood. Not
Yes.
does that we actually get
No, they don't.
stuck on a certain thing. Children move very fast.
Absolutely.
interesting. Ma'am, given that the athletic background that you come from, right? Given your specialization in swimming, yeah, sports and the house system, right? Do you also see the house system as kind of a funnel to identify those sporting talents who would then go on to represent the school?
Yes, very much. Because see, the way these interhouses are designed are usually in sync with the sports calendars of a state or a district. So the whole idea is like you have an interhouse where you give opportunity to a bigger number of children. You select from there, and that team actually represents you at the then that's how like that team goes to the next level. So the what identification is actually done during these inter-house competitions.
Wonderful. Ma'am, how do you see, particularly because yours is the day school out of the two schools that I'm speaking to, how do you see the role of the parents in the house? Because when I was a kid, I remember for the parent, it was pretty much the son goes to school. After that, within the school, what house the son belongs to, the parents didn't really bother. Is it the same or has it changed?
It has changed. Like what has happened now, because we have nuclear families, and normally, like it's either one kid or two kids. So there is a lot of interaction which happens at home about school. The child takes a lot of experience back home that this happened and this happened. And that's how, like, they also start getting involved in terms of if they have a neighbor, they would talk, okay, my son's house won that so and so competition or something. So it does go down to the parents as well, the discussion. And they also feel a lot of times motivated. In fact, we do a lot of times, like we have these inter-house cricket matches. We keep one team as a parent team also. So we have our parents also participate. So a lot of times parents have come back to us saying that we also want to play house-wise as our children are playing. So they again want to relive their school times.
Wonderful. Seema ma'am, is it the same with you?
Well, um, of course, yes, house system, of course, the students, they're together, and they're enjoying it, and they learn so much from each other.
Ma'am, in terms of the parents, because yours is a residential school, so I'm guessing parents are not as frequently
Well,
involved as a day school.
parent involvement, as compared to earlier times, like you have asked, Mrs. Shihag, I think yes, a little more, but it's a positive involvement, and we look forward to that. Sometimes, in fact, we really want parents also to be involved, especially in a residential school, because for the overall development of a child, and the outcome that we all are looking for, the involvement of a parent is very, very important. It shouldn't be that they've left the children with us and that's the end of it, which is not the case. Parents are involved, and we're happy about it. um, That's all I can say. They are like, it's different from day school to residential school because they won't be involved in day to day things of the child doesn't go home every day and tells, oh, this happened or that happened. So many things blow over before they meet their parents. So that way it's all right. But I think whatever involvement we have of the parents, it's quite encouraging, and we welcome that.
Great, ma'am. Rajeshree, ma'am, I would ask this of both of you. I'll just start with you first. Uh, Back in school, right? I had this sense of amazement about how students were divided into houses. Because the first time we were divided into houses, we were in the preparatory class. That's one step below class one. When the teachers had no idea about who we did not have any idea about who we were. And yet by 6 and 7, we found that every house had almost an equal split of talent in terms of sports and music and debating and quizzing. And this again got rejigged after we got to class 11 because that's when a fresh batch of students would join the school. And yet somehow this balance was always very carefully maintained. What is the secret sauce?
What I normally suggest to my teachers is like we have our houses begin from class one, and identifying at class one that a child is probably going to be a singer or maybe a dancer or a sports person. Yes, you can like it's like visible through the PE classes and all. But in class one, we give them the houses at say about mid of the session, not in the beginning. By the mid of the session, every teacher gets a little hang of all the kids, that what exactly they are inclined towards. And when we are dividing those houses, we sit down that, okay, this class has probably 4 kids who are very good with sports or who are very fond of, who are very agile. So let's put them in 4 different houses. Similarly, there are kids who very easily identifiable that when they're in the music class, they'll be those vocal ones. If there are 4, 5 of them, divide them equally. Similarly, dance. So definitely, because those interests are very easy to pick, and that's how we build houses.
Wonderful.
It takes a little.
Well, we differ here.
Class, and then like we do, okay, इस house में इतने sports वाले हो गए हैं, इसमें एक भी नहीं है, so let's reshuffle. And then again, by the time they are in class 6, we revisit it. Though it's not easy to change houses at class 6 because by the time the kids have built that spirit, but once we convince them, at times we are able to achieve. But again, at senior classes, when we have late entries, we again sit down and see that, okay, this kid who has just joined us is good with sports. So let's see what is the status of the rest of the house. And then we put child.
Wonderful, ma'am. Seema, ma'am, you were saying.
Right. We, give a house, each girl gets a house at the time of admission. So we don't, because actually speaking, each girl has some of the other talent, which will be later on in the houses discovered and nurtured. So, and like you said, yes, surprisingly, there happens to be a balance because the reason I feel is that each child is talented. You do get a variety of talent in every house.
Ma'am, I'll just draw on your experience of past boarding schools as well. What Burrett said earlier about one particular house being good with sports, one particular house being good with music. The cafeteria aspect is not so much in the control of the students, I guess. But why would that happen? Because a house is essentially a fluid body of students. Every year, some students will go out and some new students will come in. Or is there a culture being built?
Is that
Should I take it?
Go for it, ma'am.
Okay. Normally, like kids actually, like if a house has been winning the cricket trophy, the younger generation has to live up. There's some sort of pressure, some sort of excitement, some sort of legacy the seniors leave. So most of the time it is like lived up, and sometimes it rolls off to some other house.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Seema ma'am, in your experience?
It's about culture. They learn from each other. Like there's so much learning that happens in the house from the seniors to juniors, and seniors become their role models. And like Mrs. Shihag said, yes, it's about keeping that reputation of the house. That this trophy has to come to us in any case. So it does become that culture, and then they learn from each other. So the same talent, though yes, it's more of what how we perceive, and we kind of try to make that reputation. But reputations do change. I mean, in terms of it, no one house can be
Yeah.
branded as only good in music or only good in sports all the time. That's what I would say.
Oh, wow. This would be a case study in Pygmalion effect that when you expect something of somebody, they'll typically live up to it, I guess. Well, that's the set of questions I had. If any of you have any other comments to add, please, you're more than welcome to.
I think I'm too excited about the house system probably.
Go for it,
Uh,
ma'am.
we as leaders, we should now start looking at things like the situation the country is in and whatever is happening around. They have been students sometime in some schools, and these values have to be set right. As leaders, we need to take that ownership and that challenge that we like house system sports can really bring out great leaders who have right ethics, right values, which we can as leaders work on in the schools through these houses to have better citizens and better leaders for the future.
Wonderful, ma'am. I think it was one of the gentlemen from Star Sports, a senior producer in sports, who, after the very recent set of events that had happened, put out on Twitter saying that the country just should just play more sports. We would have lesser of these problems.
Yeah.
Should sorry, I missed it. Should do
The
what?
country should play more sports, then we would
Yes,
have lesser of these
absolutely.
issues.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Seema ma'am, any comments to add, ma'am?
Well, I'm very optimistic as far as the coming generation of leaders and doctors and innovators that we are working with here. I'm very sure this generation is smart. This generation is intelligent. They're creative. They're going to be innovators. They are good leaders, and I'm sure when their time comes to contribute to the nation, they will take our country to a greater height. And of
Thank
course,
you so much.
we have to
Sorry.
nurture that element of morals in them. That shouldn't be lost anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am. Rajeshree ma'am, thank you again, both of you, for being here today. I will
Thank
now hand this back to Achin for the vote of thanks because I think he'll have quite a bit to thank for. Achin, over to you.
So I think wonderful session, Shubhayu. No doubt about it. Some great discussions. Burrett sir, thank you so much. It has been really, really wonderful. Great to know about your first-hand experience. Some small incidents that you shared. Really wonderful. How not only during their tenure but even post that, old boys coming together and contributing to good causes. How on the last day you and your colleagues seeing them off in the station. Indeed, very heartfelt, and we all touched. And great to know about these experiences. So, Rajeshree ma'am, some very nice aspects that you brought forward, and especially the last part of your deliberation. I couldn't agree more. The fact that you emphasized on values and the fact that as a society we believe, as an educator you believe that talent is spread equally. Considering the fact that at times houses are assigned during admission, maybe even before talent is recognized. But post that, when we see given an opportunity, children do very well in their own individual spheres. In fact, we at Notebook have always subscribed to this particular school of thought, that it is about being able to ensure a certain level of engagement. We firmly believe that talent is spread equally, and given a chance, every child is unique and has great potential. It's our responsibility to ensure that we're able to engage them in a productive manner. Leadership that you spoke of, ma'am, I think are really very, very important aspects, and something that houses really contribute a lot to. Seema, ma'am, again, two very key points you raised. The fact that you're optimistic about your students, the fact that you believe that the coming generation, you have faith in them, and the fact that you feel that they are creative, innovative, they're leaders in the making. I think that speaks a lot. That speaks a lot about the kind of optimism that you are able to inculcate in your students. And indeed, the last word you mentioned, I guess, moral. The fact that we need to ensure that while we try to scale greater heights as a society, the moral fabric is intact. The fact that values, which Rajeshree also spoke about, are installed in them. I think these are the takeaways of the evening. A wonderful session. I thank all members of the esteemed audience for their time today. With your support, we have really grown from strength to strength. Together for Education webinar is your own platform, and we are very happy to be here with you. Thank you, take care, and goodbye.